Welcome to Nice and Blunt. My name is Adam Riancho, and for today's video, I'm going to give you a Super Bowl prediction for this year's NFL season, and I'm also going to break down all 32 teams down into tiers, how I view them entering the season. It will change as the season goes on, but this is my initial prediction. We'll see how it looks when the season is over. But let's get into the playoff picture. We're going to start in the NFC, where I have already given you all of my season-long win-loss picks, all my over-unders and win totals for every team. So if you paid attention to that, then you already know which 7 teams make the cut. As the 1 seed in the NFC, I'm going with the Detroit Lions. I think they're taking another step after last year's playoff debut, and I see them with the best record, not only in division, but across their conference. They get that coveted bye in the playoffs come January. The 2 seed, I'm going with the Eagles, who I think will win their division, and I think they finish the season hot, finish with a 12-5 record. At number 3, I have the Rams, who do win their division, in my opinion, also with a 12-5 record, but lose the head-to-head tiebreaker with a loss to the Eagles straight up. So they're the 3 seed. In the 4 seed, I think the Falcons win this division. It's about time they take that next step. They have the talent on offense. It's just a question of will they put it together. They finally have a quarterback that can allow them to do that. So Kirk Cousins leads them to the division. In the 5 seed, I have a very difficult matchup for them, though, against the Packers. The Packers narrowly miss out on this division title. They go 12-5 themselves. So really tough spot for the Falcons there. And then in the 6th seed, we have a divisional rivalry matchup. Sorry, my cat's getting in the frame. Between the Niners and the Rams. This one is in LA, and we'll see how that goes. In the 7th spot, I have the Chicago Bears making it in, just barely sneaking in with an 9-8 record this season. So that'll be my NFC wildcard round, and let's go through this bracket. I think the Bears are interesting, but not good enough to beat the experienced Eagles, and I'm going to take the Eagles in that matchup, especially at home. That one should go to Jalen Hurts. In the 3-6 matchup, I think the Niners have a bit of a hangover from last year's Super Bowl. While there are some question marks at the moment, Ayuk has already signed. That's no longer a headache. And Trent Williams, I think, will get sorted out. I don't see him missing more than a week. And if that happens, it's just for negotiating purposes. But the Niners, I think, do lose to the Rams in the playoffs. I think the Rams are a better team. I know they lost Aaron Donald, but you're underestimating the additions they made on defense. They were already well above what we expected last year with a young defense. I think they can improve collectively and somewhat replace Donald. There's also a rumor that he might return to the team for the playoffs specifically. He might come out of retirement. That would obviously be beneficial. I'm not predicting it, but it is rumored to be possible. So I will take the Rams, kind of like that year they won the Super Bowl. They will beat the Niners in the playoffs. That 4-5 matchup, though, this is where I'm taking the wild card team. I'm going with the Packers for sure. You know, Kirk Cousins is not the same guy in prime time, and kind of like that loss to the Giants 2 years ago when the Vikings went 13-4, I just don't see it happening. Give me the Packers over the Falcons in that matchup. So this sets up a divisional rematch against the Lions and the Packers, and I think this is a terrible matchup for the Lions. I think it's the last one that they want, and kind of like last year, we saw these two teams win on the road. The Packers won at Detroit on Thanksgiving. It can definitely happen again, and I think that bye kind of messes with the momentum of the Lions. They're going to have an excellent season, but that week off is not going to help them as much as it can, and I think the Packers will have enough on the road. They will get it done. Dan Campbell might go for it on 4th down instead of kicking a field goal that ultimately swings it out of their favor. So I'm calling upset here. I'm going with the Packers, who might just win this division straight up. That wouldn't shock me either, and I think this is going to be a really good game, but I'm going with Green Bay. So they advance, kind of like that year they won the Super Bowl. They're making a run as the wild card team. That'll be interesting. But on the flip side of the bracket, I got the Eagles at home versus the Rams, and I think the Rams just have too good of a coach to lose this one. I know it's in Philly, but I don't really care. I have question marks regarding Sirianni. I think he'll be fired at this point already, and Fangio/Kellen Moore will be taking over. But despite the offensive all-star team the Eagles have made up with Barkley at running back this season, I just trust the Rams collectively. We've seen them win a Super Bowl with Stafford in the past. So give me the Rams. I think Kupp and Nakua, along with Kyren Williams, are the difference here. Give me Stafford and the Rams. Sean McVay will get it done. And now we have a very interesting matchup here in LA. They host the Packers. Matt LaFleur, who has been part of the Sean McVay coaching staff. They used to coach together back for Mike Shanahan back in Washington. And I am actually going with the Packers. I just feel it this year. I feel like the Packers have a lot of good things in their favor. Their defense is a little underrated. And if Jair Alexander can really step up, I think he can shut down Puka Nakua, and that's going to be a big, big factor. So as much as the Rams can lock down one of the Packers receivers, there's just too many to focus on, and Josh Jacobs really elevates them from a rushing standpoint. So I am going with the Packers. They are my team to make the Super Bowl out of the NFC, but I could envision a scenario where the Rams do make it. I don't think it's out of the question. I'm really high on the Rams. They are a contender, in my opinion. So I see the Packers making it out of the NFC. Let's move on to the AFC to see who faces off against them. And I have taken the Texans to go 13-4. I think they will have the best record in the AFC. So they get that playoff bye. They get the 1 seed in the AFC. Very valuable for them. That addition of Stephon Diggs as well as Joe Mixon really going to elevate that offense to the next level. So that's good for them. The 2 seed, however, I have the Baltimore Ravens, who I really like. I mean, that Derrick Henry addition is definitely clutch. Lamar Jackson could possibly win another MVP. I doubt it. Back-to-back would be kind of shocking. But I think they're going to have a really good record, and with some divisional tiebreakers, they take the division at 12-5. They are the 2 seed, in my opinion. The 3 seed at also 12-5, I have the Chiefs, but they lose to the Ravens and the Texans in the regular season, according to my predictions, and that coughs them up the tiebreaker and puts them in the 3 spot. So they do get a home playoff game, but they're not at the top. We'll see how it works out for them. It didn't really slow them down last year. But in the 4 spot, I've got the Buffalo Bills, who I think will not miss a step despite a revamped wide receiver core. I still trust Josh Allen to take home this division himself. So at 11-6, I got the Bills, and then at 12-5 in the 5 spot, I have the Bengals, who are going to be a real tough matchup for them. They've kind of owned them in the past. So we'll get to that in just a sec, but the 6th seed is the Colts at 10-7. I think they make the playoffs. I think they're going to be even better than last year, where they were just a few plays away from maybe winning the division and making the playoffs themselves with just Minshew at quarterback. So really trust Shane Steichen. I like the Colts this year. And then at 7, I'm going with the Chargers. I know it's a bit of a homer pick, but I think they can do it. I think 9-8 is a pretty safe bet for their record. I do think Jim Harbaugh makes a massive difference. And as long as they don't cough up like 3 or 4 one-score games, I think they can get to 10-7. I do think they make it. And there's a bit of a narrative here with the Jim Harbaugh versus John Harbaugh matchup. There's going to be one of those the Monday before Thanksgiving already. Wouldn't be shocked at all if the NFL would love to see this happen, and maybe the refs nudge a certain thing in this direction. We've seen so many like rivalry rematches. Like last year it was Tyreek Hill versus the Chiefs. Joe Flacco almost got teased to face off against the Ravens, but in reality we got the rematch of the Texans versus the Browns following that Deshaun Watson trade. Deshaun Watson was just not the quarterback, though. But we also got a rematch of the Matthew Stafford Rams versus the Jared Goff Lions, and it wouldn't be a shock to me if there was just another coincidence of something like that to occur this season. So it's kind of along those lines. Maybe it doesn't happen, but in the 7th seed, I'm taking my Chargers to lose to the Ravens. There's no fucking chance I'm taking the Chargers over the Ravens in the playoff spot. That's not going to happen. So the Ravens advance, but then the Chiefs versus the Colts, give me the Chiefs. I don't think Richardson can beat Mahomes in his first playoff game. I will take Kansas City. Too much pedigree there. And then the Bills versus the Bengals. This one's a real toss-up. This one could go really either way, but I think the Bengals have a better roster, and I actually have them with a better record on the season. We've seen the Bengals beat the Bills consistently with Joe Burrow in the past. So I'm going to take the Bengals in an upset fashion here. So across both conferences, I'm taking the 5 seed to win, but otherwise I'm taking the favorites in the other two matchups. So this sets up a 1 versus 5 matchup between the Texans hosting the Bengals, and I'm really tempted to go with Joe Burrow, but I'm actually going to go with CJ Stroud. I think that offense is just too good, and there's too many weapons to stop. The Bengals defense, it's well coached, but I just don't think it has enough. Joe Mixon revenge game here will be really nice to see. So I think that's the difference, and I'm going to go with the Texans at home. CJ Stroud, I think, is going to make the case for MVP. If they have the 1 seed in the AFC, I think that's probably going to happen. So give me the Texans here. And then on the other side of the ball, I want to go with the Ravens, man. I really do, but I just can't bet against Mahomes. That's what we saw last year. I don't think it's going to take a Zay Flowers fumble. I just think Hollywood Brown revenge game is a factor. The Chiefs have a much better wide receiver core, and Kelsey is just like unstoppable in the playoffs. I'm going to take the Chiefs here. Don't want to, but I think I have to. And then begrudgingly, I really want to take the Texans, man. I'm so tired of the Chiefs advancing to the Super Bowl every fucking season. They're back-to-back champs for a reason, though, and I just can't do it. I'm going to take the Chiefs in upset fashion here. I mean, technically it's not an upset. They're the clear favorites. Everyone has a target on the Chiefs' back. They're all gunning for them. But because it's the 1 versus the 3, technically they're the underdog, and it is an upset. So give me the Chiefs over the Texans. It's just too much experience. The better coach, the better quarterback, the better team. Sadly, the Chiefs get back to the Super Bowl. So this sets us up for a Chiefs versus Packers Super Bowl, in my opinion. And oh, look, surprise, surprise, what are the colors of this year's Super Bowl logo? I genuinely didn't know before I made this pick. I swear to you. Once I saw it, I was like, oh, wow. The conspiracy theories are going to fly once again. But that makes me even more emboldened in this pick. And I think everyone's going to be rooting for the Packers. Obviously, that's what we would like to see. But who am I kidding? I'm not going to go with that. I'm taking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. They go back to back to back. Don't want to see it happen. I'm a Charger fan, and I'm really fucking tired of seeing this shit. But Mahomes is just like too good. This is a dynasty that is so hard to beat. And their wide receivers are better. That was their big weakness last year. I know they lost L'Jarius Sneed, but I don't think it matters. I'll take the Chiefs with their experience over a very young Packers squad on the opposite side. The Chiefs, sadly, are this year's Super Bowl champs come February. So kind of anticlimactic. I mean, that's definitely not what you want to see. Everyone's tired of it, but are you really going to bet against it? That feels kind of foolish. Maybe the odds are enticing enough to make the bet, but if you actually want to get the best chance of returning on investment, I would just bet on the Chiefs. So that's my call. Chiefs win the Super Bowl. Whatever. Enjoy the other, 21 weeks of playoff and regular season football. February is for Mahomes. Everything else is for us. But okay, now that I've got my Super Bowl pick out of the way, let's break down all 32 teams into tiers. 10 tiers to explain how I view all teams this season. At the bottom, I've got 3 teams on the clock. I think these are the 3 teams vying for that number 1 overall pick. I know the Saints is a bit of a controversial call, but it feels inevitable. It feels like a guarantee they fire their head coach. And if that happens, they probably go like 1-7. And I don't think they're going to be much better with the interim. If Kamara or Olave go down, this offense is dog shit. It's way too reliant on Taysom Hill. I'm calling the Saints one of the worst 3 teams in the league this year. The Giants, they would love that number 1 overall pick. They'd love to get Carson Beck and retool at quarterback. You know that's what they need. So no faith in Daniel Jones. We'll see if Dable is willing to tank and risk his job. I think the GM, though, will get fired once Saquon looks legit with the Eagles. But the Patriots are probably the safest bet to be the worst team in the league. They have very few weapons on offense and a rookie head coach that maybe gets it done on defense, but with no Matthew Judon, probably their best player, what do you have to look forward to with the Pats. So these three teams basically on the clock. Saturday is a bit more important for them than Sunday. They need some young talent in next year's draft. Next tier, I have the stepping stone season for the Panthers, the Titans, and the Raiders. The question is, are they stepping up or are they stepping down? We already know the Panthers were dog shit last year. I think they will be stepping up. And Bryce Young proves he's not a true massive bust this season. I think Canales helps them. Deontay Johnson and Jonathan Brooks help them. And there's a world where they win like 6 or maybe 7 games. I have them at 5-12, but I think they will improve. They're going to show some signs of life. That's what you're hoping for with these three teams. The Titans, will they show some signs of life as well? Will Levis prove the doubters wrong? I think not. Hopefully DeAndre Hopkins can stay healthy, but I'm worried about their defense as well. With no Derrick Henry, it's going to be rough to generate some offense. So maybe I'm wrong. I could genuinely really underestimate them, but I think they're a bottom 5 team. Not too excited about the Titans, but hopefully they show some signs of improvement and take a step forward that sets them up for next season. But the Raiders, you're really hoping that the defense can step up as well, and that next year when they get a real quarterback, replace Minshew with maybe Dak Prescott in free agency, or maybe they trade for like Kirk Cousins potentially, then hoping for the best next year. But do they really have a chance this season? Not really. And kind of the same applies for this next tier as well. But in my opinion, it's going to be far more entertaining. It is a fun ride to nowhere. There is no chance any of these 5 teams actually win the Super Bowl, let alone a playoff game. I don't think they even make it. But the Vikings, going to be very entertaining with Justin Jefferson, a really good offensive system with Kevin O'Connell, but the quarterback is the problem, and you don't have J.J. McCarthy to be optimistic about anymore, so Darnold not going to lead them past like 6 or 7 wins. That feels like the ceiling as well. But the Cardinals, also going to be really interesting, really fun offense with Kyler, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, and James Conner. But that defense has too many holes, and they're going to be in too many shootouts that they cannot overcome. So a fun season for Arizona, but it's not going to lead anywhere. And same kind of applies for the Steelers. They're very interesting. I kind of want to watch them very closely, to be honest with you. But Russell Wilson will get benched. The Justin Fields experiment will be entertaining, have some highlights for sure, but going to lead to too many fumbles and issues. He's not a winning player, and the quarterback situation is ultimately what holds them back. They're also way too reliant on George Pickens. Like, other than Pickens, it's just Pat Freiermuth, excuse me. And like, do you really trust Arthur Smith to get like Najee Harris and Jalen Warren like involved at an elite rate? I do not. So maybe the defense actually finds a way to get them to 9 wins, but I do not see it happening. I think Mike Tomlin has his first losing season of his career. The Seahawks, they're very interesting as well. I want to see what that offense looks like with Ryan Grubb. He had a really good offense in college last year, but Geno Smith going to hold them back. The O-line is also really fucking bad, and I think that's too much to overcome. Their defense is talented, but will the rookie head coach actually prove me wrong? I don't think they have a chance to win playoff games. It's a fun ride to nowhere, and this ride for the Broncos is actually going to be way more entertaining than the Russell Wilson ride, but I don't think it actually leads anywhere either. Bo Nix will look great because Sean Payton wants him to succeed and prove that it was wise to move off of Russell Wilson despite the cap hit, but there's no chance they actually win playoff games. That would be a big shock if it happens. So entertaining season for these 5 teams, but it doesn't lead anywhere. It's not going to go to the promised land. And then these next 4 teams, you can dream, but you know that dream is flawed and it will not work out for these 4 teams. The Commanders, I think, will be very, very entertaining. A weak conference helps them. A 4th place schedule, ideal. Jaden Daniels has a lot of college experience, but the offensive line is ass. There's not many weapons other than Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson. Maybe Eckler isn't washed, but like, you're really hoping that the rookie tight end Ben Sennett can step up, and I don't really have that much faith in their defense. I know Dan Quinn can make them better, but I don't think there's enough talent to really move the needle. So really worried that Jaden Daniels gets hurt, but ultimately the dream is there. It's just a little flawed to work out. There is some hope, though, that finally, without Dan Snyder, this team can live up to expectation. We will see, but I think they missed the playoffs just narrowly. And same applies for the Cowboys. I think they are going to take a step back with Mike Zimmer as the defensive coordinator. Not the same as Dan Quinn. They already lost Jerron Bland. So if you're taking away an interception every game already, then that's not good. I know they still have Trayvon Diggs, but yikes. I don't feel too great about it. And it's so reliant on CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. Maybe Rico Dowdle is like the answer, but I just don't trust it. Tyler Guyton replacing Tyron Smith, a Hall of Fame left tackle. That's not good enough, in my opinion. I think they do miss the playoffs. Mike McCarthy will get fired at the end of the season. Even if they do make the playoffs, though, are they winning playoff games? We all know they are not. The dreams are flawed with the Cowboys. And then the dreams are also flawed with the Browns. You're going to trust Deshaun Watson? I don't even think he stays healthy. And it's not like you have Joe Flacco to fall back on. It's Jameis Winston who's the backup this season. So love the defense, love the coach, like the running back, and Amari Cooper, David Njoku are fun, but I just hate the quarterback situation. I have no faith in it for it to actually work out. And then the Bucks, they're also really interesting, but I don't think they're going to be better than last year. And I do think Baker Mayfield may have overperformed a little bit in a contract season. Without Dave Canales, he probably takes a minor step back. And if Mike Evans does go down, this team will not be as good. So I have them at 8-9, 1 win fewer than last season, but they're going to hover around 500. They'll be decent, but not elite. That's the record I have for all four of these teams. 8-9, just not good enough. But in the NFC, you'll have some dreams of playoff potential. This next tier, though, 9-8, I have predicted for all three of them, but they're not going to make the playoffs. In terms of tickets to the dance, we just sold out. Imagine you're in line for tickets and the venue gets full with the person right in front of you, and that's a real big bummer. It's going to be a disappointing year if they don't make the playoffs. But the Dolphins, I think, take a step back with some losses on defense. Christian Wilkins will be missed, and if you told me that one of the running backs gets hurt or Tyreek Hill goes down, then that's not good. There's always the concussion potential for Tua as well. So I could be wrong. I could see the Dolphins back in the playoffs, but I'm going to bet against it this season. I think they just miss out on those ticket sales to the playoff picture. But the Jags, kind of like last year, maybe an injury factors in. I think they go 9-8 again, just not good enough to make the playoffs. Their defense still worries me a little bit, and there are still some ultimate question marks regarding Trevor Lawrence and that offense. But the Jets, are you really going to bet on them to actually win playoff games? I'm not. I think it's a safer bet to bet against them, and I have them at 9-8, just barely missing it because they do have a tough schedule this season. If they win week 1 against the Niners, though, it could happen. They might make it to the playoffs, but if Rodgers goes down, you know they'll crumble immediately. And then moving on to the next tier, we do hit our playoff teams, and this one, our X was toxic. These two teams are the 7 seeds, in my opinion. The Chargers, who, let's face it, let's all just blame Brandon Staley. With Jim Harbaugh in the fold now, that's definitely going to be a big upgrade. And I think they will win those one-score games that do put them over the top for 10 wins. So a little bit of a homer pick, but I do think their answers are going to be there. Their problems will be solved with Jim Harbaugh. Let's just all blame the ex-head coach. He was toxic. He was the reason why they sucked. It's a new season, and couldn't be more excited for my Chargers. And then same applies with the Bears. I think the ex-quarterback was also toxic as well. Fields is entertaining. There's a lot of believers in him, but he's more of a highlight reel type of quarterback with those 50-yard rushing touchdowns. He does not see the field well. He is not a effective passer, and you're just going to have such a big upgrade at quarterback with the vision and ability to extend plays and make off-platform throws that dazzle you with Caleb Williams. The new man in town is the answer for both the Chargers and the Bears. The coach and quarterback will make the difference. So they're my 7 seeds this season, but I think there's a legitimate shock factor with the Falcons and the Colts. I think both teams are going to be better than most people expect. The Falcons and the Colts could legitimately go like 13-4 this season. I think it is a possible outcome if things break right for these two teams. But I think they both hover around 10-7, 11-6, and they will make the playoffs. I feel really confident about that. And it's just a question of, will the quarterback stay healthy? Will Kirk Cousins look the same off an Achilles tear? I hope he stays healthy. That would be really kind of a Bummer if he did go down. And then Richardson missed a lot of time last season as well. I hope he stays healthy. I would love to see him play all 17 games. But they both have backup quarterbacks that are legit. I think they can overcome even a few missed games from both quarterbacks. Flacco with the Colts, Michael Penix with the Falcons, I do think can lead them to a playoff berth. So I trust them. I have some legitimate belief in their defensive units, and a lot of offensive weapons as well will lead to a shock factor. There's a world where they both go over 12 wins this season, but I'd probably bet on like 10 or 11 for both of them. But moving on, the more legit contenders this season, this is entering my Super Bowl bubble. All of these teams can win the Super Bowl. We'll see who actually gets it done. But these 5 teams I have in the Charles Barkley tier. They just play in the wrong era, but they're all-time teams. Really great players on every single one. And you can argue there's an all-star roster, at least on one side of the ball, with every single one of these 5 teams. So love the chances for the Texans. I have CJ Stroud as my MVP this season. I've got the Ravens also back in the mix with Derrick Henry added to this team. It's going to be a nightmare to stop the run. The Bengals have a great quarterback and wide receiver combo. We'll see about the new running back committee, though. The Bills, I mean, Josh Allen could get it all done himself. I know the receiving core is a little suspect, but really love their team and offensive potential every season. And the Niners, we've seen it before. They get so close almost every single year, but for some reason it just doesn't work out, and they're probably not going to get it done in this era with like Fred Warner, George Kittle, and Debo. It's their last chance. We'll see what happens before they have to pay Brock Purdy next year, but I don't think it happens. I think they probably fall. And then this is the join the bandwagon tier. These 4 NFC teams are the teams we will all be pivoting to in terms of our fan base in January, come February. One of them is who we'll all be rooting for because they are the best chance to actually take down Thanos. I've got the Chiefs at the top, who we'll get to in just one sec, but it feels inevitable, like it's going to be who can take down the Chiefs, and one of these 4 teams will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I think the Packers are the easiest one to root for given their youth and, kind of it's been a minute since they've won a chip. The Lions, I think, are also very easy to root for as well, but they're kind of getting a little bit old in terms of like the underdog story for them. They were elite last year, and if they make it to the Super Bowl this season, no one's going to be rooting for them as much as they did the last 2 seasons. So those 2 teams I think are probably the best in the NFC. The Rams, probably the most experienced and well-coached team to actually get it done, though. I think the Rams are probably the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs to actually win the Super Bowl. And then the Eagles, they have an all-star offense, and they could make it back to the Super Bowl. They were just a field goal away 2 seasons ago. But ultimately, I don't think any of these 4 teams will actually beat Kansas City. It feels inevitable that the Chiefs go back to back to back and get another ring on that Infinity Gauntlet. So I'm going to put my money on Mahomes. It feels kind of dumb to bet against him. Until Kelsey retires, it's just too difficult to stop. And Andy Reid will find a way. So those are my tiers for all 32 teams. Let's see what happens. But I probably pissed you off enough with this video. I'll sign off and move on with my life. But my name is Adam Riancho. Thank you for watching Nice and Blunt. I'll see you next time, and I can't wait for week 1. Going to be a fun season. Let's fucking go.